right, so now that you've tried out 7 and 8, and you tried some of those, let's do a couple from the back so you can kind of see a few other row operations in the solving process here. Let's actually do 11 and yeah, let's do 11 and 12. No, we're not gonna do 11 and 12. Well, let's do 10 and 12. So I'm gonna go to 10. I'm gonna convert this to a augmented matrix by just writing down all the coefficients. And now I need to remember I want it to be 1, 0 number, and then 0, 1 number at the end here. Well, as I look at my rows here, I see that I can't add or subtract and get a 0 because these numbers don't match. But I can make them match. I see that if I just take this bottom row and times by 2, then these would match. Or I could take my top row and times by 4, and those would match. I'm going to go with the smaller option. Row 1 is going to stay the same, and row 2 is just going to get times by 2. And that's going to make it, so it's -2, 1, -3. And then 2, -8, -4. All right, so I see that, and now that these numbers match in magnitude, I can see I can get a 0 if you just add the rows together. So I do row 1 plus row 2, and keep row 2 the same for a moment. So I got 2, -8, -4. And then 0, 1 plus -8 is -7. -3 plus -4 is -7 as well. All right, so now my first row is almost, oh wait, but it has a 0 first. That's okay. Remember, one of our row operations is we can switch rows. So if I just make one of my rows to be 0, 1 number, that's just as good. So I'm going to take this first row and divide by -7. And my row 2, let's divide it back down to what it was originally, this guy. So my first row is 0, 1, 1. Second row is 1, -4, -2. And now we want to see if we can get the other zeros. So this is 1 already. That's convenient. And this one's -4. I want this to be a 0. You want to get your zeros here. Well, if I were to add these, I want to get to 0, but it'd be getting closer to 0. If this was 4 times as much, I could add it to here, and then I'd get my 0. In our previous video, we actually did those as separate steps, and then we divided it back down. But I'm going to do a pro level kind of step here, and actually temporarily times the first one by 4, and then add to my bottom row. So I'm going to write that out as row 1's going to stay the same. But then I'm going to do row 2 plus 4 times row 1, like that. So my first row is going to stay the same. And up here, just above this row, I'm going to temporarily write what that looks like. 4 times row 1 would be 0, 4, 4. And I'm going to add this on top of my second row there. And that's going to turn it into, well, 1 plus 0 is 1. -4 plus 4 is 0. And then -2 plus 4 is 2. And now I got this. So kind of a pro level point here. You can add a multiple of another row. So it's almost like doing 2 row operations at once. And actually, now that I've done that, I'm done. Even though it's not in the same order as this, I could switch my rows. All right, put row 2 up here and row 1 down here, and then it would look like that. But I already know what the numbers are. This row is the x row, and this row is the y row. So x equals 2, and y equals 1. So I got my answer. All right, we're going to do one last example. Let's go to 12. Let's convert this to an augmented matrix. 15, 11, 36, 4, -3, -26. All right, we got this. And this is a little bit harder problem because it's actually kind of hard to find the number you're going to times by. And that's because you can't times 4 by an integer we have and get 15. And you can't do 3 times an integer and get 11. And so what you can do is actually times both the equations by something. And let's see, I could times this by 15 and this by 4. Or I could times this one by 11 and this one by 3, which those are kind of smaller numbers, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to do row 1 times by 3 and then row 2 times by 11. And it's going to make things bigger, but it'll make them match, which is really what we're trying to get at here. So as I do 15 times 3, that's 45. 33. I don't know what 36 times 3 is. 108. And then my second row here, times by 11, you get 44, negative 33, and then negative 26. Sorry, that is not negative 26. I didn't times it. Negative 26 times 11 is negative 286. So now that I've done that, now I realize I can do row 1 plus row 2. And when I do that, it's going to give me 89, 0, and then, hold on one second, negative 178. And I don't really want to keep this row. It's too big, and now that I got the 0, I don't need that row to be that big anymore. So I'm going to do row 2 and just divide it by 11. Just put it back to this. So I got 4, negative 3, and negative 26. So now that I've done that, I can divide this first row by 89. So row 1 divided by 89, and that'll make it so it's 1, 0, and then a number. And then my row 2 is just going to stay the same. My R's are having a hard day, guys. Row 2. It's going to be 1, 0, negative 2. And then 4, negative 3, negative 26. So now that I'm at this point, I got my row that's 1, 0, and then a number. And then my second row, I need this to be a 0. And so I'm going to do that pro level move again. I realize I could times this by 4 and then subtract from this row, but then I'd have to like convert it back. And so I'm just going to temporarily times by 4 and make it 4, 0, negative 8. And I'm going to subtract that from my second row. So my row 1 is going to stay the same. And I'm going to do row 2 minus 4 times row 1. So it's going to be this row minus this temporary row here. So my first row stays the same. And I'm going to do 4 minus 4, which gives me my 0. 3, negative 3 minus 0 is negative 3. And then negative 26 minus 8 is going to give me a negative... What is that? Hold on. Minus negative 8. I don't have these things memorized. Negative 18. Brain's a little tired, I guess. So now that I'm here, my first row is done, so I'm going to keep that. But my second row, I'm just going to divide by that negative 3. So the row turns into 0, 1. I get 0, 1, and then that'll be 6. So now I've done that, I got x is negative 2, and then y is 6, and voila, I got my answer. So hopefully having this second part, kind of seeing more, is helping you, and you can do the rest on your own. Good luck.